Come on.
They're right there!
Let's go. Move, 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 move. This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode. This is Choices Not Chances podcast with Ryan and Matt. I'm your co-host, Matthew Charette. Sitting next to me is Ryan Rogers. Ryan.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choices Not Chances, and I have a good one for you today. But before we get into the introduction, hey, if you see anything in this episode that strikes you, moves you, something that you think or you feel or you know needs to be shared out there, please don't be selfish with the information. Put it out there and let's help each other together. Let's spread the message. Today I got Ricky Johnson Jr. on the show with me. It's not somebody that was on my radar prior to last year, and then a mentor of mine hit me up and said, "Hey, I know what you're doing, and you need to interview this guy." And I started looking at the content, and couldn't have agreed more. And so we had been talking and trying to line up when we could make the recording happen. And so today's the day. Got Matt and got the crew in for this recording, and so we're going to kick it over. But Ricky, thanks for taking the time to come on the show and kind of open up and share lessons learned and life experiences with us, and we're glad to have you on, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. So in the beginning, like I said offline, I just like to start off understanding where people come from, right? Geographically, who do you come from? And we'll start there and then just kind of work through siblings, sports, school, and then kind of transition, and we'll just take the interview from there.
So originally I'm from Southeast Missouri, from a small town called East Prairie. It's about 3,500 people. I come from a small school as well. I think my graduating class had like 50 people in it. I was athletic throughout my life. I think I was pretty well liked by my peers, made pretty good grades. I come from a middle-class family, hard-working people. The reality of my life is, I was exposed to substance use as a young kid. I lost both my biological parents to alcoholism. My mother was 49 when she passed, and my dad was 54. So I was exposed to that as a young kid. I was raised in the bars with my dad. I don't blame them for how my life eventually played out, but being exposed to that, it impacted my life, and I aspired to be, what I saw. What I always share with people is, what we see the most frequently and hear the most frequently, that a lot of times that becomes our frequency. So, like I said, but I had good parents, had a good upbringing. Another situation that happened to me as a small kid, I was violated sexually by a family member. I was molested. So that's something that also impacted my life early on, but it still impacts me to this day. But other than that, I don't like to use normal upbringing, but I was a typical, teenage boy, got into mischief and drinking at an early age. And as we continue, I'll share more about how that impacted my life.
Sure. And I'd like to just go back. Did you have brothers or sisters?
I did. I've got a brother. He's still in Missouri, where I'm from. I've also got two sisters. One's in Missouri and one's in East Peoria, Illinois. I've got two stepbrothers as well. I've got one stepbrother. My other stepbrother was killed. It's been, I think, in 1999 or 2000. He was hit by a car, so he's deceased now.
Check. And not to be insensitive, but as you're growing up, and from your words now, you say you have a normal upbringing, but there are some abnormal things that are in there, and everybody's normal is different. And I understand that. Not to take anything away, but at what age were you experiencing? Well, first we'll talk about the alcoholism and the bar trips and things like that, and then the molestation after that. But I think age is big, right? Sure. In some of that. At least I don't know that personally, but I've read. I love psychology. I'm into it. I did it in college as well, and so a lot of the age brackets has a where you experience certain things in your upbringing has a large imprint, depending on when that happens. And so, was alcohol just always there? It
was part of the culture where I'm from. As early as I can remember, I remember going to the bars with my dad, and it was just what I was raised in. I remember them letting me taste beer when I was 4, 5, and 6. My dad let me taste it, and I don't, like I said, I don't blame them, but with me, it created a monster because it appealed to me. So it was, like I said, my earliest memories were going to the bar. Everybody, where I'm from, all families did it. Not all, but, a lot of the people that I was around, everybody, they were involved in the same thing. Yeah. Looking back, it was a very dysfunctional way to be raised. But that's just, and I always tell people my parents did what they knew and they did the best they could, but it did, it did impact me, not in a good way.
No, and I can hear it in your voice. It's like you don't want to blame anybody for how your life has played out or your experiences that later came. But things in the beginning of our life absolutely set a trajectory, at least, that we either stay on or we could find a way, or be great, be blessed enough to get off of.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And so the alcoholism is always there. Now, was there bads that came from the alcoholism, or were they pretty, even-hearted, even-keeled people even when they were on alcohol?
Say it one more time.
So, was there any anger that came from the alcohol?
No, I never saw my dad, my biological father. I never saw him being an angry person. My mother, she wasn't an angry person. And with my mother's alcoholism, it just progressively got worse as I got older. She was a beautiful woman. Very pretty. And nobody outside of the house knew it. My stepdad raised me, so he's still alive, and he's the only dad that I knew. But it was just something that outside of our home, nobody ever saw it, nobody knew about it. But other than my dad, and my brother, we knew how severe it was. But it was one of those things where, my mom was molested also as a small kid. And I think as she got older, that was just her, that's how she numbed it.
Coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yep.
And so alcohol was there from the beginning to the end, as far as you were concerned.
Yes. Yeah. I like I said, that life appealed to me because that's what I knew. And when I returned from the Marine Corps, I was like, I'm going to do what everybody else does. Taking my son to the bar, like my dad did with me, that was like a rite of passage. I look forward to doing that, to kind of let him be a part of something that I was brought up in, just because I didn't realize how backwards my thinking was at the time. But looking back, it was just it was a very dysfunctional time in my life for sure.
Yeah. Check. And so the other topic, as far as molestation, can you walk me through that?
Sure.
Just get a little deeper, because there's no doubt in my mind, of every one person that stands up and tells their story about childhood experience like that, there's 100 of them that aren't saying anything. For every one. I'm
so open about it publicly when I speak also, because there's a lot of men that they look at people like us as like a kind of an alpha guy, and they're like, they would never think that I've experienced something like that. So for them to hear me say, hey man, I've been through this as well. It's that connection that lets them know, hey, you're not alone. I've gone through it. But for me, it was, I was young. It was not something. It wasn't like I was necessarily groomed. It was an older family member when I think I was between 6 and 9, maybe. He was a teenager. It was one of those things where I knew it was wrong, but it was kind of like monkey see, monkey do. My other people that were involved in the scenario. I don't want to get too graphic, but it was just it was something I knew this is weird. I knew this was wrong, but I followed through. I didn't tell my mother about it until I was almost 30.
And how long did this go on?
Probably for a couple of years or so, maybe. I don't have a lot of vivid memory. I got the memories of it, but I don't remember exactly the time frame that it went on. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my mother about it until I was almost 30 years old. Never told her who it was, and it was just something I just try to put it out of my mind.
Is it is something like that the sensation or emotion that you have to not tell her? Where's that come from?
Embarrassment. I didn't want her to make a huge deal out of it, because in my mind I thought I was past it, or I'm good now kind of mentality. I just never. I didn't want to cause a scene, I guess. I just kind of looked at it as it happened. It's over with, and I left it at that. So that's just the way I chose to deal with it. So.
And so nobody in the family knew or knows about
other than the people that were also there. I don't know if they've ever spoke of it publicly. I've talked to some of the other ones and I'm like, I just kind of brought it up, and she's like, I put that out of my mind, like it didn't happen, and she didn't really.
You think that's a self-defense mechanism as well for like a human being? Let's say you're going through something traumatic, whether that's a car crash, whether that's combat, for instance, or whether that's, something, and I'm not comparing them. I don't want you to think that, but something traumatic like that happens. I almost feel like it's a self-defense mechanism to shard those memories out throughout your span, right?
100%.
And only reason I liken it to, because with PTSD, when you come in like a traumatic event, like in combat, your mind doesn't want you to recollect that shit. Yeah. And so it spread loads that. And then later if you choose, you can start to put that stuff back together.
Oh, it's still like you talk about putting it together. It still impacts my life. Like I'm a very modest guy. Like with intimacy, I'm very big on, like, I never want my wife to feel like I'm pressuring her. It's something I'm very cautious with. Sure. With kids, like I'm very cautious of picking up kids. Going into my wife calls me a touch me not. I kind of grew out of that because when we first met, I was like, just didn't like hands on me at all, you know. And then going into the men's locker room, it's like a minefield to me. I just put my head down and kind of I don't like seeing men's skin. It's very triggering to me. If I have the option, I always use a stall, even to take a piss. I just don't like my back turned to. I want to be able to see what's around me at all. I mean, just the thought of another guy standing this close to me, it's kind of bothers me a little bit. So it's impacted me negatively, but it's also made me more aware at the same time. But I choose to embrace it as a gift. You know, I'd rather embrace it as a gift than just be pissed. I look at it as a gift because it gives me an opportunity to connect with other guys that maybe would never have somebody be like, hey, brother, I've been through this as well. You're not alone. So that's why I choose to look at it now.
I think that's beautiful. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink and
extreme ownership.
Ownership and good, man. There's good, and it's so hard to find good in something like that. But you've taken the good of that, and we'll continue to get into it. But you've taken that all that bad and found some sort of good to come out of it.
Yes.
And that is that's amazing. And to me, like, the greatest I don't want to get into this too fast, but one of the greatest thing in my opinion, outside of family and kids, that the greatest thing that I could hear or the greatest thing that I could sense is compliments of other people or reassurance of other people. That you're doing well, but most of the time you don't get those, right?
Sure.
The best ones of those are the ones that people are saying it to other people.
Yeah.
Right? And when other people are starting to hear what you're doing and starting to spread what you're doing, and then you find out, oh, I've heard, your message is killing it. That's huge, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other thing I would say is that, at least for me personally, ever knowing that I was instrumental or influential in somebody else's success story is the best compliment or best praise that you could get.
Yep.
And a lot of times you don't hear that either.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so some of these unnoticed things start to happen, but there's no doubt in my mind that you're helping people in a way in which is instrumental in the success story of their life.
I appreciate,
and so
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
That should be something you beat your fucking chest over.
Yeah.
Because you took away to make something so dark and bad, and now you're the instrumental in the success of these people who thought there was no way out of that, right? And so that's beautiful to me, and I wanted to say that. But as we progress, so that's at a young age. The alcoholism's at a young age. You take a liking to the alcohol, probably one because chemical, things going on before you were were even born, and so you got this genetic
disposition
for alcohol, and so walk me through what that looks like as a teenager, and then going into the transitioning into the military from being a teenager from there.
My teenage years were miserable. I'm never one of those people that look back and think, man, I wish I could go back and do it again. I got diagnosed with OCD way before I was like 15 years old. This is way before it kind of got out in the mainstream.
Household name. Yeah.
So I was a kid that I wanted acceptance really bad. I had a lot of insecurities, but I was, most of my friends compared to my parents, they had money. So I just anything to get attention or gain acceptance, I was willing to do that. If I had to be more crazy or more, you got to be tougher or whatever it was. But that helped me to excel athletically. I knew that was kind of my avenue, and I was always into mischief. I mean, not nothing. Looking back, it probably was serious, but at the time it was just teenage boy stuff. Just played football, basketball, baseball. I was a decent.
Now, when did that start? When did you begin team sports? Let's say.
I played team sports my whole life.
Since you were young.
Since I was young, my stepdad was my coach all through baseball and little league football, major league basketball. Get to high school, I played junior high sports. High school was I was, like I said, I was athletic. Started varsity basketball my sophomore year. My junior year, I started at tailback on our team. I hurt my leg real bad, so I didn't play sports after my junior year. Kind of put a halt to my athletic days in high school. Then the next phase of high school was my son was born. I was 17 years old, so that I was a boy having a baby. I thought I was a man. I needed some guidance and discipline, so I done what any intelligent young man would do. I joined the Marine Corps. So
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, I got young at 19 years old. I took my son's mother, and then headed to San Diego to boot camp, and that's when my Marine Corps transition began.
Check. Now, I can't say it's a bad decision. I mean, you're going to get
Sure.
paid. You got insurance on your family.
Sure,
You got paychecks coming in. But was that the catalyst to your service? Like, I need to go get
No,
right?
it was.
Or
I had like odds and ends. I worked in some construction jobs after high school. I got laid off, and the truth is, I had support with my parents, her parents. We but in my mind, I'm like, I got to take responsibility for all this. So I need to make a quick decision. I went to see an Army recruiter at first, but that wasn't, the Marine Corps was the one.
why?
The challenge, the extremeness of it. I had an extreme personality, and I'm just like, I want to see if I can do this. And looking back, I don't talk about this often because it's not really embarrassing, but I was like, I'm gonna go recon. That's what my mind. I didn't know. I just thought it sounded cool, know. And then I went to MEPS, and they told me what they did and all this. I'm like, I don't know if I can make this. It was just kind of a dream type thing. Get to boot camp. Never been away from home really. It was a culture shock. I was a mama's boy, and boot camp was not 1999, so it was still a little bit. It was rough in there for me, and made it through it. Like I said, I got married young. Went to MCT, then my MOS school. I was a 1391 bulk fuel.
Okay.
I ended up being an Air Wing Marine for my entire enlistment. I never was deployed. Never. I spent my entire enlistment in Beaufort, South Carolina, at the air station. So
Okay.
I pumped gas. That was my job for almost 5 years. So yeah.
Sure. Now, what about and just tying this back around, was boot camp difficult? Because I had to do things and be close to men, showers and the PTs, that was uncomfortable for me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I didn't have.
To be honest with you, I got used to it. I look back and I did. It's just something because I was forced into it.
Kind of have to. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just everybody kind of was. It was just what it was. I had no option. So I got used to that and there. Physically, boot camp. I thought I was in shape until I went there. Then I got around some people that were really in shape, and I kind of saw that I had
a little humbling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, from where I'm from, I'm thinking I'm the man. Then I get there, I'm like, you're really not. I realized quick that I wasn't the man.
You ain't the man no more.
Yeah, and got sick in boot camp, probably the worst I ever got. I mean, it was bad. I didn't think I was gonna. I just kept pushing through. And I had the mindset my entire enlistment of the Marine Corps: don't go to medical.
Yep, quickest way off the islands the first time. Yeah.
So
you're not on an island.
I was saying, yeah. But I never went to medical, and I pushed. I graduated, pushed through, and that's how that was my boot camp experience. Yeah.
Check, good to go. And so, bulk fueler, you get through the Marine Corps. Now, I want to touch on transition.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything, or is there anything else through active time you want to touch on?
Oh, my active duty was Like I said, I never was deployed.
But you were active during 9/11, yeah?
I was.
So what'd that look like?
So what happened was I went in 99 and I got out in 2003. So I did my 4 year enlistment. When 9/11 happened in that time frame is when a stop loss took place in my MOS. And I told my gunny, I'm like, look, if you're going to recall me, just keep me here. And he's like, no, you're good to go. So I signed out, turned everything in, got my orders. Went back to Missouri for 2 days, and he's like, "Hey, you got to come back." I'm like,
checked into that new roster somewhere.
So I get back, and I worked with PMO for about a month, and I'm like, if you're going to keep me here, at least let me go to my shop. So I sat there for about another 8 months, and it's crazy that we talk about this. I still have dreams about not being able to go home, like being still like, when you guys gonna let me leave? I tell my wife about it all the time. I'm like, in my dream, I'm like, when are you gonna let me go home? But so My time in the Marine Corps was a lot of partying, young, all these new experience. I was by Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
Places to hang out.
Oh yeah, so things that I never experienced, and I partied. We worked hard, and I partied hard, and I discharged, broke, had no money. I spent everything I had, blew it, and so that's kind of my. I had a kind of a bitter taste when I got out. I always tell people I'm more proud to have served now, looking back, than I was at the time. I just took it for granted. I wasn't.
I think a bunch of people are just young, man. Yeah. You're young and you don't get the gravity. And I talk about a lot of it now, especially with guys that are older and maybe discharging between that 11 and 20 year mark, or you made it all the way. As soon as you get out, it's there. It's like, what is this? And it's like, you do a lot of it now, so I'm sure that hole is filled. Yeah. But it's like you're selflessly giving yourself, whether you're conscious of that or not, is another issue. But at 18, you probably don't think that, and you don't realize like the void that fills to give back to somebody, right? To give back with absolutely zero expectation of getting something, in return. You're just trying to give, right? Mm-hmm. And we do that. When you put your name on that contract, you do that. And I say it on here all the time, but I'm going to keep saying it on here. It's like, that is honorable. That feels that you're doing something for people you don't even know, right? And that's a huge thing. Sure. That's a huge thing. And when you get out, whether you knew it or not, it hits. And it's like, what is this? Why do I feel this, whatever this is? And and that's a lot of the reason I wrote my book and launched this podcast, is because it took me a couple years to figure that out. And I would love for guys not to take a couple of years of boozing and drugging and running themselves in the ground. A lot of people lose families because they don't figure this out quick enough. Like their wife leaves them because of the alcohol, the drugs, or the extreme depression. And you almost can't be mad at the woman, because it's like, it takes a special person to take somebody that completely changed and then comes home, you know what I mean, and goes through this, and they have to be strong. But yeah, so we can move on from that. I want to touch 9/11 one more time. On 9/11, did you see it? Were you watching it?
Ironic you asked this, because on 9/11, I was stationed in Camp on the air station. I got a DUI while I was in, so I was transferred to Camp Lejeune to the substance use treatment program they had. Okay. And it was during 9/11, and that's when 9/11's when I was actually on Camp Lejeune for the first time. And I didn't hit Camp Lejeune again until 2 years ago when we moved here. So
right on. And you spoke over there, right?
I speak on there frequently.
Supposed to be over there, and I think I had some.
You had a medical issue.
I had a medical issue. Started shaking too much. Yeah. Hopefully, all that's behind us.
So I was in the treatment facility when 9/11 happened. Yeah.
Check. Gotcha. Okay, so let's kick over to transition. So you have a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth. It's time to get up. You got stop loss, which I'm sure puts a bitter taste, because it's like you have all these plans to get out this date, and then something happens, and now all of those plans are shattered. You don't even know how long you're going to be sitting here, and that's rough. Okay, so boom, now it's time to transition. Sure. What does that look like?
I made a left turn as soon as I got out. I'll just be honest with you. I had good intentions. The bad thing for me was I drew unemployment for as long as I could. I was irresponsible. Unemployment spoiled me. Like I said, I was a mama's boy at the time. My mom and my stepdad had a store that I worked in. As soon as I got out, like I said, I had good intentions to get a job, do the right thing. I was going to be the father to my son I didn't have, my biological father. And if I told you I made him a priority, I'd be lying to you. I went head first into methamphetamine, alcohol, pills, criminal activity. It was not something that I was really peer pressured into doing. I was just somebody that was curious, and I felt good doing it. It was instant gratification, and it took. It was the next 10 years. That was my life. My son, he saw me during these time frames. He saw me get high on meth. I would take him with me on drug deals. Multiple occasions, I was so intoxicated on alcohol and pills, he saw me covered in my own piss. Very twisted, and I would let him get high in front of me. This was later on in the stage after the Marine Corps. But my mind, I was showing him the right way, how to do the wrong thing. And it's a very backwards way of thinking. I was not some successful drug dealer, if there's such a thing. I wouldn't glorify it. I was a nickel and dime thief. I stole from people, lied, manipulated, and I deceived. That's how I supported my addiction at that time in my life. And like I said, it was from the time I was 23 or 22 until I was about 30. For the next 10 years. So, after I transitioned, I would get a job, lose it, get a job, lose it, and it was all substance use related. My transition was, I was not prepared. I didn't go to the VA. I didn't get involved in connecting with other veterans. I just had that mindset of I don't want any part of this. I don't want anything to do with this.
Almost like you want to go complete antithesis and go the other way as fast as you can. And I get that. A lot of guys do. And what you see a lot with the Marine Corps is a lot of guys will. It's like a split. It's either outlaw or biker criminal path, or like police, SWAT,
100%,
FBI, CIA. Yep. Like it's a lot of times those two splits, and you have your outliers, and your randos that are going to fall in the middle of that, but it does not look like a bell curve.
No, it's
you know what I mean. So
yeah.
And that's how it goes.
Yeah.
My friends did that. Like they got out, and I had to disconnect with them while they were running 1% clubs because it just wasn't me.
Yeah,
like I was trying to barely survive on my own in my own transition, and they're out going wild with the clubs, and I get the appeal though. Do you see what I'm saying? Like I get the appeal. You got the
brotherhood.
There's a brotherhood, and there's a camaraderie there, and you're all in it together, and you're usually on the same missions and going to the same places, and so I get the appeal. It's a lot like jumping to the same life, only there's a lot more laws that you can break, and there's not the buffer of the Marine Corps to try to help.
Even like I said with my son, I always swore that I was not going to do to him how my dad was with me. I was not going to expose him to these things. I was going to make him a priority. And I remember my mom one day, she's like, "Ricky, you're doing the exact same thing with him that your dad did with you." I was a dad that would come. I would go get him from his mother's, spend a few hours with him. Then I would pawn him. I'd use the word pawn him off, but I'd leave him with my mom while I went to do whatever I was going to do. And like I said, my mom and I, we had a. I don't use the word odd relationship, but my mom had me at a young age, and we were like best friends, but she was my mom at the same time. I was a mama's boy, so she enabled me a lot. She would never tell me no. She'd always pick me up when I fall, bond me out, whatever it was I needed. She was always there. And that's like I said, she did what she thought, what she knew how to do. Great woman, but at the same time, I needed some accountability, which ultimately, as we move on, that happened as well.
So. Now let me ask this. And I'm sure we're going to get more into it as we move, and this might be premature, but would you say that's the right way?
The way my mother was?
Because I get wanting to take care of your kid, but I also see the enabling side of it.
Oh, yeah. It's hard for me to say that because the way I see it at the time, it took me a while to figure it out. And without accountability, there's no reason to change. Okay?
Right.
And it's funny you ask because I spoke to a mother today about this same thing, and I just told her, I was like, she bonded her son out of jail that I'm friends with, and I said, you're probably going to get some pushback. People are going to tell you that you should have let him sit, and I said, I'm not telling you that you should or shouldn't. I said, because it may have been the best thing for him to bond him out. I don't know that. I said, but for me, my family let me sit many times, and I said, looking back, it benefited me, until we. The way my wife puts it is, rock bottom is not until everybody stops supporting you.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's when you're truly at rock bottom. And I fortunately I had that happen for me eventually, and it saved my life. So, when I tell people about enabling, and you're robbing them of the opportunity to learn and grow. So just something to, and it also tells people, I don't think you can do this by yourself. So you keep picking them up, and it's not always the best thing.
Check. All right. Well, so what's forward from that?
So my mother passes away in this time frame. I began getting more heavily involved in substance use, catching drug charges, DWIs, in and out of treatment facilities. Ended up eventually catching 2 drug charges. Part of my profile is I'm a 3-time convicted felon for methamphetamines and DWIs. Done a short time in prison. I've been to jail multiple times. I spent during this time frame 5 years on felony probation. I paid into the state of Missouri close to $20,000 in fines, court costs, intervention fees, attorney fees. In the past, when I started getting the DWIs, I've got 3, and I lost in the past 26 years. I've not had a license for 18 of those years. My last DWI, I lost my license for 10 years, currently 11. I'm just in the process right now. Back in July, I had to fly back to Missouri to go to court for the judge to grant me access, or granted me permission to pursue my driving privileges. He's like, Mr. Johnson, I see you no longer a threat to society. You can proceed with this. So I've had to get the interlock device installed in my vehicle. My wife is suffering from my consequences from 11 years ago. She's got a blow in it to drive.
Yeah.
She's a good sport about it. It's something that weighs heavily on me because I'm big on, I take responsibility. I own my shit. What I do, I own it. I don't want nobody else paying for it. And that really bothered me. So right now I'm waiting on, still can't drive. I got to wait till October 24th to get an assessment, then take some hours of classes, then go to the DMV, get the insurance. So it's been a long process, but the fact that I'm here right now, close to driving, is probably one of the biggest accomplishments of my life, just because of how much I sacrificed to get from there to here. So
sure, I know I was following that on your social media for the last several months. I was watching the updates come through, and driving's a big thing. Not that I was having my license taken from me for criminal activity, but I'm still on the verge of if they're going to take them from me because of my epilepsy. Yeah. And that's tough. Like, what do you do if you can't? What do you do? And it's almost like they force you to break the law if you're an adult, because it's like, how do I pay for an interlock? How do I pay for classes if you won't let me drive? Sure. But I mean,
I proved that I was reckless behind the wheel of a vehicle. I now collaborate with law enforcement. I couldn't say that I always didn't have resentment, because I did, but now. I have a lot of friends that are law enforcement. When I say collaborate, that doesn't mean I share information. I share with them my perspective, and they share with me theirs, so we can better support one another.
Sure.
I work in I volunteer in the court systems and things like that, and that's how I've been able to gain access back into the prisons and jails and all that. But
sure. But
yeah, not having a license is a very helpless feeling. Not having any independence, having to depend on people, ask a ride here, a ride there. It was a long road, to get to where I'm at. So yeah, that happened. All those things transpiring happened after my mother passed, and I spent the next 10 years in that life. Getting a job, losing a job, getting fired for having dirty urine, just nonstop chaos, toxic. I was not a good person to be around. I was just always under the influence, involved in something illegal. I probably had drugs on me. Couldn't trust me, I'd steal from you. Anything that I thought would benefit me, I would take it. Not robbing, but I was a thief. I committed theft many, many times. Just not being a good person. And even when I was doing it, I always had remorse. I always felt guilt. I was never like this, just remorse, or just person that didn't care. I knew I'd do it, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm doing this. I always had a heart, but still did it, to get what I needed to get.
And it's you said it before, but most of the thieving was to support the other.
100%.
So you didn't just go steal from people, not to justify anything, but I mean, you're stealing to support, financial help.
Sure.
Okay.
And what and I I wasn't a victim. I created victims. My crimes weren't victimless. I was stealing from good people. I was breaking trust, violating people's, safe spaces, and you'll hear people say they have no regrets. Okay, I have a lot of regret. Did I learn from it, and would I be here without it? No. But looking back, I don't feel good about hurting people, especially my son. And I impacted people's lives in a negative way. So what I always tell people is, the regret's my guideline. I don't ever want to forget about that because it keeps me from getting complacent. I know if I get complacent, it'll kill me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I said that to a therapist one time about the memories of friends, because she kept telling me that until I took this bracelet off, that I wasn't going to heal.
Yeah, I don't buy
and
that.
It's like, no, I put the bracelet on because if I'm ever in that situation again, I need to remember exactly what I fucked up right here.
Sure.
So that I don't wear another one, And
I'm the same.
Same principle.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't obsess over it and dwell on it and consume myself with it, but I don't ever want to forget about it. And that's why I reflect a lot. When I reflect, people are like, "Ricky, you gotta let the past go." I'm like, it ain't about me dwelling on it. I don't want to forget about who I used to be, because then you have a tendency to creep back up on you. So yeah.
So, how do we get out of drugs? How we get? Where's the
Great.
rock bottom?
So this is when I crossed paths with an angel over there, my wife. So I was divorced twice. I was living with my stepdad. I was 31 years old. He got sick of my shit. He's like, "Listen, Ricky, you won't stop stealing. You won't stop lying. You're a terrible example to Landon, my son." He's like, "I'm done. Figure it out." And me and my son were living with my dad at the time. This is after my mother had passed. So he puts me out, and I was homeless for a couple of years. I wasn't the guy
with your son homeless.
No, but my son was with my dad still.
Okay.
I wasn't the guy living under a bridge holding a sign, but I was just couch surfing and using people. And I ended up in a rescue mission in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, where I'm from. It's about an hour from my hometown. So what happened was, I was living in this place called the CSC Center, Community Supervision Center. It's like a jail, but you can leave and go to work. And I couldn't stay sober in there. I was bringing drugs from the factory I was working in. I was bringing drugs in, meth. I wasn't going to make it. And what saved me probably was the day that I was to take my drug screen to go full time at this factory. My urine was dirty. I got fired on the spot. Cried leaving. So, I'm like, I'm done with this shit. I'm willing to do whatever I got to do to get out of this. So I go back to my PO, which I'm friends with now. I said, "Whitney, do you care about me?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You got to get me out of here." I said, "I'm not going to make it." She's like, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "I want to go to the rescue mission," because it was structured. They had more spiritual based. They had better food. They had workout equipment, things that appealed to me at that time. Went there, and this transition took place for me. The way I always tell people is, I'm not the most religious person, but I'm very spiritual. A religious man fears hell, and a spiritual man comes from it. And in that rescue mission for me, it was like the material walls collapsed and the spiritual world awakened for me. And I said, I prayed to God, I'm willing to do whatever I have to do. I'll always get back to the next man. I never doubt you when things don't go my way, and I'll always give you credit when I'm blessed. And at that rescue mission, it took a lot of flexibility and commitment. But my wife was working at a building down the street from this rescue mission, and we just crossed paths one day, and meeting her changed everything for me. She believed in me. She saw something in me I didn't see. And it gave me the motivation to be the best person that I could be, because I knew that there was no way in hell that she'd give me an opportunity if I was living the way that I was. Married way out of my league. I joke to everyone's, Julie's got 2 master's degrees and I got 3 felonies, so we're like the yin and the yang. We balance one another out.
Got control over there and chaos over here. Huh?
So that's when the transition for me getting sober began. Julie set boundaries with me. She held me accountable, and she wasn't going to settle for anything less. She's like, "Look, if we're going to be together, this is the way it's got to be. You got to stay sober, respect me, and keep a job. You got to be responsible." And I needed somebody to do that, and she was willing to do it. And my life took off. I faced, not long after, the most painful, traumatic experience of my life, but I was sober for the first time in my life, and it was through meeting Julie, just having somebody to believe in me, and it inspired me to get it together.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and thank you over there. You're amazing. It's amazing how I try to think about this in my own mind when I get frustrated or I get angry or like stressed out. I try to think like everybody else is stressed out too.
Oh yeah.
There's other things going on in everybody's world, and just try to be the light. I put that on my platforms all the time. Be the light, be the light, be the light, because everybody has so much darkness. Everybody has things, whether you want to admit it or not. Everybody has things.
100%.
And if you don't have things, you're fixing to have things.
For sure.
And so like, be nice. She may not have to marry you, but just be nice to you on the road and realize, and gave you positive encouragement about who you could be. And
it's funny you say that, because her being nice to me is what gave me the courage to be like, maybe she likes me.
and maybe I need to stay straight for something. Yeah.
I misread her totally. We laugh about it now, but that's what her just looking me in the eye, like, it made me feel like she's really interested in me. And I had nothing. I had 3 changes of clothes in my name, and that was it. That's all I had. I had debt, baggage, divorced twice, felonies. I was everything that you shouldn't want. Mm-hmm. And but by her just looking me in the eye and like talking to me, being nice to me, I'm like, man, I got a chance with her. Mm-hmm. And it just gave me the courage to keep just seeing what's going to happen.
Getting better.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Getting better. Yeah. Because true hell is when you meet the person that you're supposed to become.
True. Say it again.
Because true hell is when you meet the person you were supposed to become.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
So if the Ricky then died, let's say,
mm-hmm.
and you go to heaven, and God said,
"That's who you're supposed to be."
That's who you were supposed to be, and you fucked that up.
I like that. I'm gonna have to remember that.
And it gives me cold chills. I heard it. It's not my words. I heard it from somebody
mm-hmm.
else, and sickening because I don't even know where I heard it, but I heard it, and that's right, man. If you could look over and see you, if that past you could look over and see you, would even think that was possible?
It reminds me of a quote I read that said, the most pain that we'll ever, something to this extent, it said the most pain that we'll ever feel is our unfulfilled potential. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, because you meet an angel, because somebody shows you a little bit of tough love, let's say, and responsibility and ownership, like, you're changing lives now for the better. Sure. And I want to continue mm-hmm. to progress through it. But talk to me about the transition between meeting Julie and, let's say, booking your first speaking gig.
Sure. So the first thing I'll share with you about, meeting Julie is I think I was 31 or 32. My way of thinking, I was a boy in a man's body, very immature, reckless. I needed a lot of work. And when I met her, she's like, "Listen, Ricky," she said, "I hear you saying one thing, but you're doing another." She's like, "Your conduct doesn't match your words." And she said, "I want to explain to you the way that you appear to other people." And man, when she told me the way that I truly appeared, it hurt, because I thought I was a funny, likable, cool guy. But the truth was I was obnoxious, insecure, loud. Just wasn't good to be. But nobody ever really sat me down and said, "Listen, Ricky, she loved me enough to tell me," and that's what began the progression and change in my life. So,
sure.
So I met this amazing woman, my soulmate. My life was taking off. I was using my GI Bill, going to college, making the dean's list. I was back in the gym, gaining the trust back in my dad, my stepdad, my family, the community that I terrorized. But most important, I was finally able to be the father to my son that I neglected being for so long. Something I always share before I get to the next part is like, a lot of people think with success and progress, they think things are going to get smooth and life's going to fall into place, but it's an uphill climb always. You're going to be tested. Success is asking for a larger set of problems and the courage to continually solve it. And, when life's going smooth, I always tell people the enemy's around the corner. You're going to be tested 100%. Yeah. So, for me, all the time that I spent worrying about what I wanted, what I needed, poor Ricky. Ricky's locked up, Ricky's addiction. I neglected the person that needed me the most, and that was my son. All the broken promises, the letdowns, the lies. I'd put other substance users, my addiction, in front of him. The message I was sending to him was, these people in this life overhear me more to me than spending time with you. And 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 my conduct proved that I was a liar. Long story short, Julie and I were already married. December 12, 2015, I get a phone call. My 18-year-old son felt like he didn't have any worth or value, and he goes to a city park and he hung himself. He took his own life. So it knocks the piss out of me to this day. It never goes away. I wake up brokenhearted, go to sleep brokenhearted. It never ends. I'm not mad at my son. I'm not mad at God. My son made a bad choice, and the way that I choose to look at it is, his death killed me, but inspired me. It inspired me to be a better person. I'm very aware every day of how my conduct can impact somebody in a positive or negative way. Do I blame myself for his death? Many days I do, but I can assure you my conduct impacted his mental health. And I wasn't the only one, but I take responsibility for my part of it. And the reason I share that with people is I want them to know, hey man, how you treat people, it can impact them in a positive or negative way. There's days I wake up pissed, can't drive, my son's dead, I got 3 felonies. There's a million excuses I could use to be a negative person and project it on other people, but I refuse to do that. I reflect, and I always look for my reason why. And even this tonight was my reason why. These are the reasons I get up every day. I care to be a good example to these people I speak to. I care that they look at me like, Ricky Sui says that he is. He inspires me. And I care to let people down. I care that I don't want to disappoint people. Mm-hmm. And that helps hold me accountable and helps me to not be complacent. So yeah. That was a transition in my life that inspired me to pretty much be who I am today and be doing the things that I'm doing today. That's what lit a fire in me. So yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't have any depth there. I don't have anything that I can say that make anything better. Finding the good in the death of your child is, I've never lost a child, so I have zero to say there, but I can say that, I can't even say that, but I would ask, what was the biggest positive influence on your resiliency to go through that?
Oh, my wife, 100%. And I also looked at it like I refused to let. The way I looked at it was, I'm not going to let my life be wasted and my son's life be in vain. And that's the way I chose to look at it. At the time, I didn't see it then, but I'm sure it disturbs people when I tell them. They're like, how do you deal with it? And I said, by dealing with it. I don't run from it. I don't numb myself anymore. I sit through the pain, process it, and I work through it. And I choose to look at my son's death as his gift to me. I know it sounds morbid, but that's the way I have to look at it, because do I hurt from it? Does it make it any less painful? No. But if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. That's the way it is. And people contact me. I get contacted by parents who've lost kids to suicides or overdoses or whatever. And I said, look, guys, I just said, listen, I said, there's nothing I can say to you that's going to make this any less painful. It's always going to be there. But we learn, we get stronger, and we adjust and learn to get through it. And I said, what's going to happen is this. I said, you're going to get through this. You're going to persevere. I said, you're going to gain wisdom, experience, and all this knowledge. And I said, down the road, I said, I guarantee you that you're going to cross paths with somebody else who's going through what you're going through right now. And I said, you're going to have that experience and wisdom to support them like I'm supporting you. That's going to be your obligation to your fellow man. And I said, that's the way I look at the situation with my son. Does it make it hurt less? Do I have bad days or bad moments? Yeah, but I'm not going to project it on other people. So going through it, I was fortunate to have my wife. I never had thoughts of going back to my prior life. That was the thing that everybody worried about, was I was going to, go backwards. And, I tell people now, I'm like, I'd rather be dead than go back to that hell I was in. It was a living hell.
That's not living.
True.
It's not living.
Yeah, 100%. So
existing, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thought of, and I tell people this, what keeps me going even now and even then, I'm like, do I have bad thoughts and bad moments? 100%. I have a good life now, but I have those bad thoughts in my head, like of self-pity and my life, she'd be better off, and just crazy thoughts. We all have those kind of crazy thoughts. What keeps me going is, I can't imagine transferring onto my wife the things that I feel from my son's death. And what I tell people is this. I said, I can't imagine leaving my wife behind for the rest of her life wondering, why wasn't my love for him and his love enough for me to keep me alive? What I do wrong? And that eats me up. That keeps me like pushing forward and like, not having any of those crazy thoughts. So that's what always keeps me pushing forward for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Jordan Peterson, you know who that is?
Yes.
So I'm a big fan, and he would say, like, never underestimate the gaping hole that your lack of existence would be to everybody that knows you.
Sure.
And that's so true. Like, as bad as things get, and I try to say this to my community because I have a community in which you well know who is absolutely killing themselves with alcohol. Mm-hmm. And you could say other illicit drugs, and I don't think that would be accurate. I think they're involved, but I think by and large they're getting drunk, blacking out, and shooting themselves in the head. Yep. And these are my brother. I've lost more people outside of combat than I lost in combat to this stuff. And I try to tell them, like, of all the things, like, there's so many dark, bad things that could happen in the world, but I will show you people that have got through them. Yeah. I can show you people forever. There's been people losing things and getting, look at Israel right now. Yeah. And there's going to be people that persevere, that step up and say, I follow me. Yep. I've been to where you've been. Yep. I will get you out of that.
Yep, for sure.
And it's beautiful. That's what you're doing. That's, I think a lot of it too, the reason I can almost relate, and I think our, same community, but it's relatable, is like, that's where we come from. Yeah. That's the place that we come from. We help each other. We get each other out. We're alpha. We're going to roo, you know what I mean? And too many guys don't want to lean on them. They don't want to make a call. They look at this prideful, they feel like they're the only ones hurting, and they don't want to be embarrassed or call their buddies or call their leadership from the past and say, hey, I need help. I'm in a, nobody wants to do that. Yep. And it's exactly what we should be doing. Sure. You know what I mean? So
it's just to have somebody that I always tell people, I think most all of us know in our hearts and minds when we're doing too much of something and not enough, especially if it's causing a negative impact in our life. We're not trying to be fixed. We just want somebody to listen to us and validate what we're going through. Like, hey, Ryan, it's understandable you feel this way, brother. You're not alone. You're not weak. You're not a weaker person for thinking these things. I have these thoughts as well. We just want somebody to listen to us and, to be there. That's always like, connection saves lives.
Oh yeah.
So.
And it's just huge. That's, it seems cliche, but you hear people all the time saying, make the call, the call. And it's so right. And it's right in two ways. It's right in the way that maybe the person that picks the phone up needed you to call right then. Yep. Or maybe you needed them to answer right then. Yep. And you didn't even know you needed them to answer right then.
It's funny you say that. I had a guy, not funny, but it's been probably a year ago. I have a friend that he struggles with alcohol a lot. And he'll call me occasionally under the influence, and it's one of those conversations where he's not hearing nothing I'm saying, and it's one of those like just I have to have a lot of discipline to sit through it. And it's been about a year ago. He called, and when I saw his name on the phone, I was like, damn, because I just knew what it was. And I told my wife, I was like, I gotta answer it. So I answered the phone. I'm glad that I did. It was one of those conversations. We talked, and I listened, and I tried to give him some encouragement, and just I don't ever give people advice. I just share with them my perspective. But after I hung up, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, he thanked me for answering the phone because of what we're talking about. He's like, you answering the phone prevented me from making a bad choice." So I try to always remember those type of things. And even with something I'm still triggered by with my son's death is when I spoke to my son on the phone 7 hours prior to him hanging himself. And I'm glad we brought this up because I want to share this publicly because I always do. But when I spoke to my son on the phone, he was calm, collected, happy, content. Nothing seemed wrong. He had wrote me a letter that I share publicly when I go give presentations. He cleaned his room. That was very out of the ordinary. He'd never done. Looking back at that phone call, there was a ton of red flags. Okay, the fact that he was, obviously going through those things, we don't want to think our own flesh and blood's thinking of self-harm or suicide. Yeah. But looking back, his calm demeanor, he was happy. He knew that he was not going to hurt anymore, and he was content with that. So am I saying if somebody goes from an extreme behavior change of depression to happiness or happiness to depression, am I saying they're thinking of self-harm or suicide? Absolutely not. But it's something to pay attention to.
Sure.
So what I tell people is, like, if you see your brother, your Marine brother, sister, whoever it is, if they're going through these extreme behavior changes, it doesn't take a lot of effort to text or call or approach somebody and be like, hey, brother, hey, sister, I just want to check on you. Is everything okay? Mm-hmm. That interaction might be the matter of saving somebody's life. Oh. But the point I was going to make was with that phone call, with the phone calls. Where my wife and I lived at the time, we didn't have cell service. When we finally got to cell service, my wife's phone starts blowing up with text messages, missed calls. People were already posting on social media about my son before I'd even seen it, before I even knew about it. And it's still true. Anytime somebody calls my wife, especially our family, I'm like, answer the phone. Mm-hmm. Don't not answer it. But when I got back to our computer that night, people had already been messaging me prior to me even knowing about my son's death. So it was like a really just a weird situation with that. So I'm big about answering the phone. I try to always, if I can get to it, I'm gonna get to the phone.
Absolutely. What was the hardest part? And it's such a crazy question, mm-hmm. but as you see it, as you feel it, what was the most difficult part of that?
Of which part of it?
Of losing your son.
Oh man.
Because that sounds like it'd be pretty hard that way, to not know and then have all these.
Yeah. I don't. I guess I was pretty much in. I don't want to say I was in shock, because he had been struggling, and you don't want to think that's going to happen, but I was like, I wasn't just like, I can't believe this happened, but it was just a weird. Honestly, the hardest part for me, it's something I still have. It's hard for me, is that it took I'm able to be for other people what I wasn't able to be for him. But at the same time, if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I carry guilt with that. I carry guilt about that at times, because I have two stepdaughters that are 20. How old's Leah, babe? 28 and 30, just 32. I'm able to be for them the father that I wasn't for my son. And I just through trial and error and learning, what's acceptable. So that's still what's hard for me. Yeah.
Chuck, what was your first let's say speaking gig?
First speaking engagement was, what I started doing was I just started sharing my entire life on Facebook. Every bad thing I had done, I put it all out there. The way I tell people is, I'm willing to stand in front of a group of strangers and expose my entire life, risk humiliation and embarrassment to inspire one person and to gain confidence. Mm-hmm. I didn't pursue public speaking, okay? I still stutter bad. I talk fast. I get nervous at times, forget what I'm trying to say. What I say is, whatever we fear the most, when we overcome that, that's going to become our greatest strength. So when I started putting content on social media about 6 years ago, people were like, hey man, you need to start doing videos. And I did that, got decent with it. Well, I started public speaking into a mirror and an iPad, crying, sweating, stuttering. I'm like, God, why are you calling me to do this? My first speaking opportunity was to a high school football team that my friend coaches in Monroe City, Missouri. He's won a state championship a couple of times, and he's like, hey man, will you come speak to the guys? I'm like, yeah. Had it wrote all on paper. Thought I was prepared, and I was far from it. I was a mess, but I got the point across. Yeah. From then to now, I probably presented well over 300 times, probably 200 different venues. I progressively add more. I remember everything verbatim. I'm to the point now where I can add stuff and go off path a little bit, and I never had any training doing it. I just kept doing it and repetition. Mm-hmm. That was my first one, and that's what it just kind of picked up momentum from there, word of mouth, social media, and I knock on a lot of doors, like on LinkedIn and stuff like that.
What was the sensation or emotion or feeling that you got when you spoke the first time?
Nervous as hell.
Yeah.
Cry, just how do you think I look, babe? Anxious, yeah. Well, like I said, I've my energy's a lot better now. I never get in front of an audience. I still have nerves. No matter
Confidence, though. You have nerves, but you have confidence,
yeah,
right?
I'm a lot more confident. I spoke really fast in the beginning. I look back at old videos, and I'm not close to the same speaker in person that I was then. But it was the first time it was a mess. To me, it was. But the kids, they got a lot out of it just because of the transparency of what I was talking about.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. That's awesome. I asked that because that first speaking gig, there's a lot of nerves that go into that, man. And I've done it a good number of times now, but my first one was because you're like, you don't want to mess up, but you've never done it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can watch somebody speak in front of people as much as you want, but until you get up and you have to present your, your cause, your efforts, your niche to somebody, it can be that way. I still get nervous, but I think a little bit of nervous excitement is good.
Sure.
I think it keeps you up.
I would rather be nervous than be complacent.
Sure.
The worst experience I've had by far was it was on Camp Lejeune about a year ago. The weather was cold outside. It was windy, raining, and I had like 10 groups that day. And the Camp Lejeune benefited me tremendously in the beginning because of COVID-19, because I could only speak to like 20 Marines in a group. So it was just it was nonstop all day, and that gave me a lot of repetition. But on this day, it was cold outside. My iron was getting low. I stepped in front of 100 Marines. My mouth literally froze. Like I was just like, I couldn't even. It was a public speaker's worst nightmare, and I just stood there. I'm just like stuttering, and I pushed through it. And the next group, I did good, but that group, I was like, please let this be a dream. I wanted to bury myself. It was terrible. Man. Yeah, it was bad. But I grew tremendously from it, just from not stopping.
Sure. It's like when you're in Little League and you're pitching, and like let's say your dad's the coach.
Yep.
And let's say you're having a terrible game. You've hit like 2 people in a row. Game's on the line now because they're going to walk some guys home.
Sounds like this is from experience.
And he just leaves you out there to lose the game for your team, to teach you a lesson. Yeah, man. Yeah, those are lessons, though, and those are good lessons generally.
Yeah, for sure.
Life is struggle. You said it earlier, but it couldn't be more true. This wasn't supposed to be easy.
No.
Go all the way back to Sisyphus pushing a boulder up the hill just to go to the bottom and push the boulder back up the hill over and over and over. But I think when we get towards the end of it, we realize that it's not about getting somewhere. We're not trying to get there. It's about the journey getting there.
100%.
It's about the people and the interactions and the connections and the product and the the deal and the sensation and emotion. That's where you're alive. You're not alive at the end. The end is just the end. You're alive during the journey.
And my wife and I talk about that often because people are like, how'd you get from point A to point B? And I'm like, in between here was the important part. You know what? It didn't just happen overnight. It was a lot of
the 24 other letters. Yeah, man. That's awesome. Okay, so where are we going now? Tell me about where we're at now.
Sure.
What we look for, what do we got coming in 2024?
Sure. So last year I started and I'll get to I have some massive opportunities coming up, and I'll get to that. But last year I started a nonprofit called the Semper Relentless Project. I jumped in feet first. Prior to that, I worked in community outreach with the homeless veteran population. I'm a peer support, and also I was the outreach coordinator. I was like the tip of the spear. I'm the guy going into the woods behind a dumpster, wherever there might be a veteran at or a civilian. I would go to them and try to get them connected with services. So I went from that to public speaking full-time, traveling. So the Simple Relentless Project is pretty much what it is it's just the nonprofit I started that helps me with funding to help me to be able to support the mission as far as going to speaking at places, traveling, all that's entailed with that. I speak in prisons, jails, schools. There's probably not a demographic that I've not spoke to, and that's the beauty of my story is because I'm not like confined just to veterans or just to high schools. Due to my lived experience, I have a broad reach, and even with the groups I speak to, if they can't relate to what I'm talking about, they probably know somebody that's going through it.
Yep.
So I've got some big opportunities coming up with the Virginia Department of Corrections in November 28th in Richmond. The governor may be there. This is with the substance use disorder program manager. They're having a conference for the whole state.
Okay.
This transpired through LinkedIn, knocking on doors. And I'm traveling to Missouri October 26th to speak at like 10 different places. I've got a big conference there. I'm speaking at a prison. The big opportunity I have there, and don't get me wrong, every opportunity is significant.
Sure.
But professionally, there's other opportunities that's going to help me to gain more exposure. I got my first opportunity with the federal court system, so I'll be speaking at the U.S. District Court there. They have like a program for it's kind of like Veterans Court, but it's like for federal offenders.
Sure.
So that's going to be a lot of exposure for that. So we got the ball rolling pretty good. We got a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah, that's right on. And when do you expect to speak next?
Possibly October 20th.
Okay.
And it'll be on Camp Johnson.
Okay,
So
right
I think
on.
if you're available for that, you can tag along with me.
Yeah, check it out. Get some pictures, man. Maybe I'll see if I'm available. All right, man. Well, Matt, you got anything? Look, man, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the transparency.
Sure.
Because like we said in the beginning, it's just for every one person that's struggling with any issue and voicing it, there's 100 to 1,000 people that are struggling with that same issue and are not voicing it, right?
Well, what I appreciate about this specific podcast is this is the most in-depth interview I've ever got to take part in. So I appreciate everything you've asked me. It's always therapeutic for me to talk about it. What I always share is to be therapeutic, it doesn't mean you have to be a therapist. It's being present with somebody and be willing to listen to them. So thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Absolutely. I look forward to watching you progress and watch the speaking progress and even helping take part. Anytime you need something from me or Matt, Joey, please reach out to us. Let us know what you need help with, and please stay in touch, because I think what you're changing lives, man, and anybody that I can see changing lives. It's another reason why I didn't go so quick, right? Vladimir told me. Shout out Vlad. He told me, you got to have this guy, and then I wanted to watch you for a while. I had to make sure of what I'm getting, right? And there's a lot of gimmick out there. There's a lot of people out there running shows, running this, running that, and if you watch them long enough, it's a gimmick, and you see it. And I don't bring gimmicks on this show.
For sure.
I bring people who are making a net positive impact on people, and I don't care how you do that, because it's just Mother Teresa said, you want to change the world, go home and love your family. We need more people to impact positive change in a local manner. Exactly what you're doing. So man, I appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate you too, brother. Thank you.
All right, guys, choices not chances. We're going to get you next time. We appreciate it.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger, we have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking a building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good. That's a good shot. That's funny. Yeah.